So the framework then is, how do you build a campaign about that? How do you build a campaign so that when we see, for example, a couple of years ago, you remember in 2010, there was this big sort of period of several months when the press was all full of stuff about how the Obama administration is being too tough on Israel. They're challenging Israel. How dare Obama challenge Israel? They're fighting with Israel over settlements. And they're challenging. And you wanted to step back and say, really? Where are they challenging exactly? Because what was really going on was we saw a series of requests from the Obama administration to the Israelis. Please stop building settlements. Answer, no. Please, really, stop building settlements. No. Pretty please, stop building settlements? No. Okay, pretty please, just a few settlements, just for a short time, just for the moment, stop building some of the settlements. Maybe. No. And then they stopped asking. Pretty much that was it. Never did we hear what real pressure would look like. Real pressure means stop building settlements, they're illegal. Answer, no, we're a sovereign country, we can do what we want. The next statement is, okay, you're a sovereign country, you do what you want, but you know that $30 billion that we're committed to give you? You can kiss that goodbye. And you know how we protect you in the United Nations so that none of your officials are ever held accountable for these violations? We're not doing that anymore. That's step one of pressure. That's what the beginning of pressure would look like. So what do we do about that? We have to build campaigns that can answer each of those immediate crises and at the same time take into account the continuity of building long-term campaigns that aim at changing public opinion, changing discourse in this country. So one of the key ways of doing that has been so important in the last few years is the campaign known as Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions, or BDS. Now, people have been doing what amounts to BDS work for a long time. It means targeting corporations that make a profit off of occupation, that make a profit out of supporting or enabling these violations of human rights, that make a profit out of settlements. So how do we identify those corporations, and then what do we do about it? So the idea of BDS, and part of the reason why I think it's so creative, it was based on a call from Palestinian civil society organizations back in 2005. All these organizations, 170 of them, pretty much every women's organization and trade union and youth organization, all the civil society organizations working in the occupied territories came together and called on the world to engage in a global campaign that would result in boycotts, divestment, and sanctions aimed at bringing that kind of economic pressure, nonviolent pressure, to bear on Israel to stop the violations. So it's not about just, we're against Israel and we want to pressure them. It's very specific. The goal is to make Israel stop 3 sets of violations. Number 1, stop its occupation of the 67 territories. Number 2, stop the discrimination against Palestinian citizens of the State of Israel. And number 3, allow a just solution to the refugee crisis based on international law. So it's very specific. When Israel does those 3 things, the boycott, divestment, sanctions campaign is over. It's not about 1 state, 2 state. That's a decision that Palestinians and Israelis are going to have to make. It's about rights. It's about equality. So that's the basis of what the campaign is. The other thing about it that makes it kind of great is that it recognizes that while this is a global campaign, conditions in every country are different. So in Europe, for instance, there's a ton of Israeli produce that's sold all over Europe that's labeled made in Israel or picked in Israel. That isn't picked in Israel at all. It's manufactured or made or picked or grown on settlements in the occupied territories, not in Israel. So that becomes a very important basis for a boycott campaign. It's about individuals boycotting specific kinds of fruit oranges, avocados, tomatoes, whatever it is. In some countries like Argentina, India, countries that buy a lot of Israeli weapon systems, a lot of Israeli military goods, because that's one of Israel's huge exports, is military stuff, the campaigns there are to stop buying military stuff from Israel. It's a kind of sanction. In the U.S., historically, the first campaigns were divestment campaigns. And even now, divestment is one of the big focuses. So one of the great ones is the Caterpillar campaign. And part of the reason I like Caterpillar so much is that it lends itself to a whole bunch of different kinds of campaigns. For students, for communities, divestment, boycotts. So why would we target Caterpillar? Any of you know anybody who works for Caterpillar? From at the manufacturing side or the sales side? Manufacturing side. Some of you may know then that, among other things right now, the Caterpillar company, which is of course a global company, is participating in what some of my colleagues who work on economic justice issues call a race to the bottom. And the union at Caterpillar is furious about this. Caterpillar has a manufacturing center, a factory in Canada. The workers are very well paid. They get paid an average of $34 an hour. And it's just been announced that this Ontario plant is moving to get cheaper labor costs. Where are they moving? They're not moving to Bangladesh. They're not moving to China. They're moving to Indiana. Bingo. They're moving to the U.S., where the labor cost will be half what it is in Canada. They will pay their workers $17 an hour instead of $34. So Caterpillar, any way you cut it, is a pretty crummy company. But from the vantage point of the Israeli-Palestinian question, what are they doing there? Well, they're doing a few things. They're manufacturing a specific kind of bulldozer. It's called a D9 bulldozer. It's 24 feet high. It's like a monstrous thing. And they're specially made to the specifications of the Israeli military. So when they're shipped off to Israel, they're made to accept armor plating by the military, because then they're used as weapons of war. They're used to destroy Palestinian homes. They're used to tear up olive groves, olive trees that are sometimes 500, 600, 700 years old. And of course, in a few instances, they have killed people. It was an Israeli soldier driving a Caterpillar bulldozer that was responsible for the death of Rachel Corrie, a young American peace activist in Gaza who was standing in front of a Palestinian home trying to protect it from being demolished when the bulldozer ran over her. So there's a bunch of reasons to boycott Caterpillar. There's a bunch of reasons to divest from Caterpillar stock. So what would that look like for a campaign? Well, if you're on campus, this campus, not this year because God knows what global warming is doing, but ordinarily you get a lot of snow, right? So every couple of years, the campus has to buy new snow removal equipment. They could buy any kind. There's a bunch of manufacturers that make tractors and backhoes and snow removal shovels and all those things. You can do a campaign that lasts for a year or 2 years to educate the student body, the faculty, the administration, and whatever board makes those kinds of purchasing decisions about why the next time we have to buy new snow removal equipment, it should not be Caterpillar. And because the real purpose still is about changing the discourse in this country, about getting people to see what our tax money is doing, what it means to talk about occupation and what our connection of it is, it's all about education. So at the end of the day, if you win, it's fantastic. But if you don't win the vote, that's not the worst thing in the world either, because you've reached all these people with this new information that brings the issue right to where people are. It's not about asking people to come to us, come listen to our issue. It's about going to where people are, passing out flyers on campus, going to the meetings of the student government, student assemblies, the faculty senate, all those different agencies.